Arkham Knight, despite being out for nearly a decade and still looking better than most games today, has a ton of unsolved mysteries. Even if some of the theories fans had crafted were either confirmed or denied by the game that shall not be named, we still have some theories that still could be true, and I want to talk you through some of my favorites. These are 6 Arkham Knight theories that, to me, significantly changed the game. This one is actually a theory that contradicts what many people initially believed from the legendary opening of Arkham Knight. The opening sees you in the shoes of a police officer who needs to stop a civilian from smoking in a restaurant, except the smoke isn't coming from a cigarette, but rather a bag of fear toxin seeping out. Now, many assume this to be a side character in Arkham Origins named Anarchy, who was previously defeated and due to Origins coming out after Asylum and City, had canonically not been seen or heard from since the events of Arkham Origins. The common theory is that this person in the diner is Anarchy, and while I believe that for a while, and I do think it's a solid theory, there are a few issues with it. The first is simple. Why? Why would Anarchy do this? He's been shown to have a hatred for capitalism and the higher Gotham Elites, so terrorizing Pauli's diner, a diner not even in the financial district of Gotham, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Why also would Anarchy work with Scarecrow, someone who intends to drown the city in fear? When the cloudburst is activated, it's Gotham's criminals, people Anarchy generally sympathizes with, and the lower class who could not afford to escape who would be injured the most. The upper class, the rich, they sit above the clouds and are likely to be the first out of the city, by helicopter or by bribing officers to let them out. It just doesn't make sense for Anarchy to want this, even if he admittedly does want revenge on Bruce for stopping him in Arkham Origins. Instead, I think the person at the table is Jason Todd, aka the Arkham Knight. Jason and Scarecrow's plan is extremely sensitive. If any piece of it goes wrong, then Batman will win. They have to be extremely careful with who they trust, and in the case of this event that kicks off the whole evacuation of Gotham, it makes sense for Jason to go in on his own to ensure that there are no issues. There are even more details that hint to this not being Anarchy, like the A on the table not having a circle, Anarchy not wearing his gloves, and the fact that his gear is in GCPD, meaning that there's a high likelihood that he is still within Blackgate. This next theory discusses the hallucinations of the Joker from Arkham Knight, specifically whether the Joker was real or not. Now, of course, he isn't real in the sense that he isn't material, but this question and the theory I want to propose is to distinguish if the Joker we see is a product of the fear toxin or of the Joker's blood being inside Bruce. As a refresher, when Batman was poisoned with the Joker's blood in Arkham City, it altered his brain a little bit, causing him to hallucinate just once. Couple this with the trauma of that night and we have a Batman that is especially susceptible. What we find out in Knight is that Joker's blood made it to some civilians, who we end up fighting in Knight, and it's explained that, as their disease progressed, they became more and more like Joker. It's almost as if the Joker is slowly possessing their bodies. The reason we want to distinguish between the fear toxin Joker and an actual Joker is because it gives us a better idea of what Batman's mental state is like going into Knight. A common interpretation I have seen is that Batman is manifesting the Joker through the fear toxin because he is terrified of turning into him. He's terrified of killing, stepping over that line. If it's the Joker's blood, then we can infer that this progression throughout the story of being more desperate, having more hallucinations, is a product of the Joker being that little voice in his ear. In this case, literally. If it's the fear toxin, then we can infer that the reason Batman fears those things, thus hallucinating them, is because he believes that the Joker will take over his body and turn him into essentially the man who laughs. I think it's a mix of the two, but the fear gas just makes it clear to us, the player. Joker was always in Bruce's head, we saw it in Arkham City, but with the fear gas, we, the player, are shown the manifestation of those fears. Maybe this is common knowledge, but I've seen a few posts online saying it was just the fear gas or just the Joker's blood, when I believe it's definitely both. This next theory builds upon the previous, because some people believe that the Batmobile's excessive force was the Joker's influence. Let's get one thing straight first. Despite what the footage might have you believe, according to the canon, the Batmobile is non-lethal. But some believe that the fact it exists at all and has those lethal rounds is concerning regarding Bruce's mental state, with it implying that he is becoming more violent. But I think there's another way to interpret this. I think the reason the Batmobile's tank functions were introduced is because Batman is becoming more desperate to keep Gotham in line. Think about it. He now has more enemies than ever, he's not getting any younger, and while in gameplay this guy is at his peak, in the story, many note that he's slowing down. Being Batman for so long has taken its toll, and I believe that the Batmobile was indicative of Batman trying to hang on to the fear he holds over Gotham. Part of what makes Batman scary is that he's larger than life, but if there's one thing we know about fear, it's that the more we know about it, the less we fear it. When Batman is interrogating the militia about Barbara's whereabouts, he has to push the tire to the guy's melon before he finally spills it, and he does this because the militia don't fear him. The Arkham Knight has supposedly told them all his tricks, so when he busts out something completely unexpected like a friggin' tank, they become terrified. This lack of fear is also what I believe drove Batman to eventually use the fear toxin at the end of the game. This one is pretty simple, but basically, I think the Nightfall ending, specifically the idea of Bruce Wayne dying and a ghost-like Batman watching over Gotham, was the perfect setup for a Batman Beyond game that, according to insider leaks, might have actually been in development. We've seen some concept art and know it was an idea, but it makes me wonder if Batman leaving the crime fighting behind for a bit after the events of Night would lead to an eventual Batman Beyond game. Of course, Suicide Squad confirms that Batman is currently 6 feet under, but who knows, maybe before Suicide Squad was confirmed as the next project, the team were considering placing a Batman Beyond Arkham game set in the same universe. Considering how evolved the tech is in the Arkham games already, it would fit surprisingly well. Arkham Knight already nailed the Neon City aesthetic and has even had a Beyond skin in both Night and City, so who knows? It's nice to think of what could have been, and it's at least better than huffing enough copium to think that Gotham Knights is an Elseworld Arkham Knight sequel. Okay, this next one is admittedly really far-fetched, but bear with me. The dream theory, or more accurately, the fear toxin hallucination theory, suggests that the entire game takes place in Batman's head. Think about the things Batman has to confront about himself in the story of Arkham Knight. He needs to confront the fact that he and the Joker aren't that different, that he's always running a risk of crossing a line, that he might not be strong enough to beat his greatest foes, that he failed his pseudo-son, and that he failed everyone else, Gotham included. There's a lot of reflection, and while Batman doesn't fear much, I think it's reasonable to assume that failing to save people, like the citizens of Gotham, like Jason, like himself, is a big fear. It's what drove him to become Batman in the first place. This would explain the prolonged Joker hallucinations, how Batman is able to move significantly faster than before, and it would explain how almost every major character appears in some way within the story. When Barbara dies, it's because of the fear toxin, which means Batman canonically fears losing those close to him, and fears not being strong enough to save them. So who's to say this isn't one big fear trip that forces him to confront different aspects of himself? With Barbara and Commissioner Gordon, maybe the purpose of that is for Bruce to come to terms with the guilt he feels for being partially responsible for her capture and at one point, death. There's more to cover, but I want to save it, because truthfully, this is such a crazy theory that I don't want to give it too much time. This next theory suggests that Jason Todd never, at any point, wanted to kill Batman. I know this is a little hard to believe, but I think this is supported on a few occasions. For one, Jason never flat out takes a lethal shot. Anytime he has Batman cornered, he slows it down. Hell, when he does actually shoot the guy, he does so once in the torso, because the goal isn't to kill him. If he wanted to kill him, he would have gone for the head and ended things there. He does these things because he wants to win, and to have Bruce concede defeat. You remember when Jason finally helped Bruce? It was after Batman finally acknowledged that Jason was right to be upset. Because Batman showing this weakness, conceding that he did inadvertently have a part to play in the way Jason is, was Jason winning. He showed Batman the consequences of his actions and made him feel guilty. The other thing to note is that, let's say Jason did kill Batman, then what? Would he just go on a killing spree around Gotham as the Arkham Knight? What would he do once Batman was defeated? Would he let Crane run around with the fear gas? Would he simply confine himself to a quiet life somewhere else? It's still uncertain what the Arkham Knight's fate was at the end of the game, where Jason was going, but I certainly don't think it was anything simple. I think because of this, Jason never wanted to kill Batman in the first place, and working with Scarecrow was a very intentional decision because Scarecrow never wanted to kill Batman either. He just wanted to destroy what he stood for. Show the people of Gotham that their savior is fallible, that their god can bleed. Arkham Knight wouldn't side with someone like the Penguin, because the Penguin would just kill him if given the chance, because that's his ultimate goal. Scarecrow? Not so much. So through this lens of the Arkham Knight not actually wanting to kill Batman, these decisions make a lot of sense. So, what do you think about those theories? Are they solid, or am I batshit insane? Are there any other theories you'd like me to talk about? Let me know, and I'll see if I can put together another one of these videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope the rest of your day is fantastic.